Welcome, Chiefs Kingdom, to another edition of the Out of Structure Podcast. I'm Matt Stagner here with Ron Kopp Jr. on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network, coming to you after a disappointing end to the Super Bowl rematch. Kelsey Bowl 2 ended in disappointment. The Chiefs really, as I stated in the in the winners and losers post, the Chiefs really let this one slip through their fingers. Ron, you were at the game. How was Arrowhead? How was your experience? And what are some initial thoughts on the Chiefs losing a close one to the Eagles 21-17?
Yeah, that pun was just too set up for you, wasn't it, Stags? Because it really was a slippery day, just a dreary day all day. As someone that went to the game, as someone that was excited, as I've been for our Chiefs regular season game for this in a long time, honestly. Week 1 didn't even get me this juiced up. I was pumped up. But the dreary day ended up in a dreary kind of, end, right? Because it was such a fun game at first, but that's the thing. This Chiefs team, kind of showing the same issues we saw in the week 1 game, the only other game I've attended. So yes, but folks, I am 0-2 at Arrowhead this year. So come after me. I am only going to the Christmas game for the rest of the year against the Raiders. But yeah, no, it was a fun Arrowhead game for a lot of it, Stags, but man, dude, the second half Chiefs, they just it's kind of the opposite of the past, right? Just can't get it done in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, we shouldn't be totally surprised with this outcome, given what we've seen so far this year. Even before the season started, I think a lot of us had flagged this as a game they might lose against a really stacked Eagles team that went out and reloaded even on top of a great roster. And surely they were going to be motivated to come back after the Super Bowl loss and avenge that. There are all signs, I thought, pointed towards this being a tough matchup. But when they came out in that first half, it looked like the Chiefs were the better team. Nothing was easy. It was hard fought. They were scrapping and clawing, but they were up by 10. And the defense, again, continued to play lights out. The offense was doing enough in the first half that you said, all right, this one could be pretty solidly a win. I mean, 17-7 at the half. If they score even one touchdown in the second half, the outcome is quite a bit different. And they managed to make 2 really crucial mistakes in this game in the red zone. Patrick Mahomes' interception in the end zone in the first half. Travis Kelce fumble on about the 10-yard line in the second half. Those are 2 plays that they'd obviously like to have back. And then, of course, the final drive, they still had a chance to win this thing. So, you can look back and say it's all doom and gloom, and this team is having the same struggles they've had all year. The receivers are, incompetent the way they've been all year, because it does feel a lot like maybe some other losses they've had this season. But they were in position to win this game, and it came right down to it. Mahomes made 2 stellar throws on that final drive, and they walked away with a loss.
At some point, though, Stags, you are who you are. And the discouraging part to me about this was Matt Nagy, after the bye week, talked about the things they focused on going into the bye week, or over the bye week, looking back, right? They're self-scouting. Turnovers, penalties were 2 of the biggest things they needed to correct. What were the 2 biggest things that affected that second half, Stags? It was turnovers and penalties, even though that interception did happen in the first half as well.
And you got to add drops to that list. I mean, I know they had, penalties were an issue, and maybe some of those were declined, but they ended up with a similar total.
Let me tell you why penalties were an issue. They actually had a penalty on every the first drive, one of the first plays of the first 3 drives of the second half. It set them back on each time, the first 3 plays of the second half.
Of those, yeah. Then
they had the Creed Humphrey false start, which was kind of BS, but then, the intentional grounding is also a mistake on Mahomes' part. I mean, that's also a 15-yard penalty that takes you out of position, even though, he had a chance on that 4th and 25. We can get to that. But
yeah, that's rough, by the way. 15 yards for intentional grounding seems pretty harsh. I don't know.
I
Not trying
get
to
it though,
rewrite the
because
rule book, but that sucks.
I like it though, because don't let quarterbacks get away with, not, if you're getting sacked, if there's nowhere to go with it, the guy deserves a sack. I mean, I like the rule. Mahomes just has to find a way to just throw it at somebody. He didn't know where the line of scrimmage was. He just threw it behind the line of scrimmage. That's all it was. But all that to say is, the thing why it's so discouraging to me is this is week 11. This is after the bye week. This is when the team needs to be playing at its peak. And to see them go their third straight game, I know everyone's heard the stat now, but third straight game without scoring points in the second half, that is really disappointing. And the reason they're not scoring points in the second half, Mahomes talked about this in the post game, is because teams know they're going to run in the second half when they have these leads, right? Against the Dolphins, against the Eagles. They've had these leads where, yeah, obviously they're going to want to run the ball. So the team is going to force them to pass the ball, force them to win the game by getting completions, sustaining drives by catching passes. And they haven't been able to do that, against Miami or against Philly. And it all came down. Both games came down to number 11 dropping a deep pass when he should have caught it. I was over it, Stags. You should have heard me at the stadium. If anyone was sitting in section 121, that was me. And you know exactly what I was saying about MBS. That was me. Yes. No, if you were sitting anywhere near, that was me letting him hear it after that play, because I had a pretty good view, man. I was right there, right in front of it. It was the game-winning touchdown pass pretty much. The Eagles would have had some time to answer, but I'm over it, Stags. This guy, I know our AP staff had a great tweet about it. What exactly do you do here? Shout out, Office Space. That's how I'm feeling, Stags. And so that's where it's just these same issues are still happening in week 11. And that's the problem. And this pass offense needs to be the reason they win. And it just feels like it's not going to be. If this team wins, it's going to be because of defense. It's going to be because of ball control. I just don't know if that's going to be, a recipe for winning a Super Bowl this year, Stags. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been preaching for offense, for more balance on the offense, and using Isaiah Pacheco as a building block. I mean, he was great this week. He's really somebody that they should build around. He's somebody that gives energy, somebody that gets extra yardage. Rashee Rice is the same way. They've got some of the pieces there to build a balanced offense. But yeah, if teams are going to say we're going to take away the run and force you to throw the ball against Mahomes, it seems crazy. It seems counterintuitive.
Exactly.
Right? You've got the best quarterback in the NFL, and you're going to try to force the ball into his hands. It's a really strange place to be with this offense, and I don't know. I don't know what they do mid-season here to change it. You and I were talking before the broadcast. They were like, hey, what does it look like in 2024? What does this room look like?
That's what everyone should be.
They make.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, that's how everyone should be thinking at this point about the receiver room, because there's no in-season fix. We're past the trade deadline. There's no free agent. They're not going to sign T.Y. Hilton or Sammy Watkins or I know I had a buddy, shout out my guy, send me something like that this morning. Like, hey, T.Y. Hilton's out there, that's not the fix, guys.
What year is it? Yeah.
This team is winning if this team wins this year, it is going to be despite of the wide receiver position. And it's not going to get any better until 2024. And that's all there is to it. That really is. And and we have a question about this, honestly. Maybe this is a good time to ask this question. I love this question, honestly, from Super Bowl 57 champs at MV Pat Mahomes. At what point do you give Pacheco 25 plus carries and run an Alex Smith style offense? Stags, I know you love that question, because at some point, don't we have to kind of get there, or is that the solution? I don't know if it is, but whatever they're doing right now in the second half sure isn't working.
Yeah, I mean, if it's an Alex Smith offense in, 2017, absolutely. They had some deep shots. They had, that was a great offense. I just can't imagine that happening. I do think, I agree, the solutions aren't going to come with personnel changes in midseason. This could come with play calling changes. It could come with an emphasis on some of the in-house options.
Yes.
Spin cycle on J Spin 525. How about more multiple tight end sets? It worked early in the game. How about more running backs and wide receivers out of the backfield? How about Rice and Toney getting more of the targets? Rashee Rice burner account on Twitter, being forced to watch Rashee Rice taking a short out for 14 yards while putting one of the best corners on his knees, just to see him jog up the field and have Justin Watson get 11 targets has to be a felony. So, I mean, I think all of these kind of get at the same idea, is that this is a group that is not going to change who's there, but can you change who gets the ball? Which of those changes do you think would be most effective?
Yeah, let's dissect all these questions here, because I do love a lot of what's being said right here. There's a lot of different points I want to make off of what's being said in these questions, because first of all, the Alex Smith offense, that doesn't necessarily mean just giving, handing the ball off over and over and being a run heavy offense. What that does mean, though, we all knew it. We all watched the Alex Smith offense. It's just creativity out the yin yang, right? Just like, option plays, and then obviously you don't want to put Mahomes on too many options where he's running. With Alex, you felt a little bit better about letting him be the battering ram, I guess. But, more just, creativity in terms of, just trick plays. I mean, just like things that are, things that are going to get the ball in the hands of guys that are making plays like Toney and Rice, like in creative ways. I mean, that's what the Alex Smith offense was getting playmakers the ball in space in creative ways. The screen game. Why have we not seen the screen game be a more effective part of the offense? And in the Alex Smith era, that was our favorite part of the offense. That was Andy Reid was known for.
That's really mind-blowing. I was calling for it, especially this week. Given this defense plays, they ran the ball better than I expected them to be able to, but you complement that with the screen game, and you've got something cooking. I'm not sure why or where that's been.
I know. And so that's one part of that Alex Smith offense part, but no, there's just to dumb it down, it's just more so like, hey, like just stop being a spread offense, be more the West Coast offense. Like that's really what it is. Like Andy is a hybrid. He runs the spread and the West Coast together. That's what makes it so unstoppable or just so good, is because it has so many but the West Coast part is more conservative, is more, hey, time of possession. Let's win this game with defense. Maybe the spread part's more scoring. He needs to just the dial just needs to go a little more to the West Coast part, right? And so that's where Spin Cycle talks about maybe some of these tight end sets, these multiple tight end sets. I would actually disagree to an extent, because there's no pass threat out of those.
That's right.
There's no pass threat out of the 13 personnel anymore. When they had Jody Fortson, teams had to still respect the fact that they could throw out of it. And so they weren't maybe necessarily selling out for the run. So you could get some runs. And then at the same time, teams were just in their base personnel. So then you could throw out of it, just take advantage of linebackers trying to find Fortson, Gray, and Kelsey all over the field. But Bell, I've said it. I don't need to keep going over. But Bell's just not given that same threat. I wish they'd give, maybe one of these UDFAs that they have on the practice squad, just a little sprinkle of a chance, down the stretch of the season against these Raiders, Packers, Patriots teams you're playing. Just see what you got in them. But I will say, just real quick, with Toney, he mentions the running backs and receivers out of the backfield need to be more of a focus. Yeah, I did like how they were using Toney out of the backfield first half. That was really cool. Yeah. I want to see more of that. But Toney did get banged up, right? He hurt his hand. We saw that. I actually got a good view of that on the sideline. Andy was kind of, talking with him, and he was just in agony. He really was. He was kind of, going up and down, kind of holding his hand for a second. So, they might have been kind of cautious with, even though he did return punts after that, they might have been cautious with, playing him too much. And Andy said it, in the postgame, he said, and I quote, it's mainly the health part. I've been cautious with his knee when talking about Toney and the reps he's gotten. So there is a chance, if the really important game comes into, January, Toney's usage goes way up. But yeah, I do think his last point, Rice and Toney need to get the majority of the targets at wide receiver, is a correct one if this offense wants to be the most successful, right? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I'll keep repeating it until that actually happens. Let's focus on Rice primarily, with Toney complementing him, and Isaiah Pacheco as the cornerstones of the offense, along with Travis Kelce. I mean, I think we do have to start thinking about that Travis Kelce conversation a little bit more. I know it's been happening in the media a little bit. He looked a little bit slower, a little bit more tentative this week than usual. Showed some frustration. I think the coach had some frustration with him as well. I don't put that fumble on him. I mean, he got it punched out. It's going to happen, but it was a frustrating game for Kelce, and and a little bit worrisome for things to come there. So I think you got to find the next wave, the next generation, and the next identity for this offense. And to me, it is those guys who can get some yards after the catch. It's some of those guys that are energy givers, and I think that's the best thing you can say for Pacheco all season and last season. He's an energy giver, right? He's a spark plug. Tony was that way this week again too. Even as a punt returner, I put him on the winners list in that article just because the guy just refused to get tackled on punt returns and really was trying to bring some energy and trying to make something happen. Those are the types of players that you want to focus on.
Yeah, I would say the most juiced up the stadium was that one punt return he had where he almost broke it. And honestly, we were all kind of saying he had an angle to the left. I think if he would have just broke left and kind of darted for it, and because he does have a tendency to just continue making moves and making dudes miss. Which I love. It was electric, man. I was fired up after that punt return. And that's what Tony gives to the offense too. And so that's where you hope, the team can get him more involved. And it is just, something where, at some point you can't hold anything back, right? At some point you have to just let him play as much as he says, right?
I was about to make that point is not just on Tony, but just in general. We keep saying, Andy Reid's holding something back. They're holding something back for the playoff run. I don't know that they were holding anything back from the Eagles here. This is a team that, this was a slugfest, really. This was a big game. Do you think they were holding something back this week?
No, I would only say like Tony's like snap counts. Like I would say maybe if we were in the playoffs in this game, Tony does play more. Because again, I mean, he even said it in the game, and I know he was kind of talking about leading into the game how that he hasn't been involved leading into this game, and he kind of said, yeah, we got him more involved this game, but it's still only 28% of the snaps. I feel like he's proving that he's one of the best guys. Him and Rice are the best guys with the ball in their hands after the catch. That's what this offense needs 90% of the time when they're throwing the ball. So yeah, I think if it was in a playoff game, they'd get him the ball more maybe, but that's the only thing. I don't think Andy's like holding anything. He wasn't holding anything back play calling wise. They wanted to win this game because if they win this game, Stags, they're the only team with a two losses in the AFC. They have a 1-game lead on everybody, and they have a head-to-head tiebreaker against 2 of the, I think 3 or 4 teams with a 3-loss record. So
that's right.
They would have been sitting pretty if they would have won this game.
Yeah, we talked about that last week, how big this game was from a potential standpoint. Losing isn't as harmful, but winning would have been huge. And you talked about being 7-3. Blake Williams on Twitter says, "Here's a crazy stat: the Browns and the Chiefs now have the same record, and the Browns have scored more points than the Chiefs so far this season." How does that make you feel?
Dorian Thompson Robinson, PJ Walker, and Deshaun Watson, 3-headed monster. What are you talking about? That's it's hard to beat that. Yeah, right. Yeah. Did you sneeze? What was that?
Yeah. How about Dr. Spaceman's tweet here?
Well, let me say real quick though, I do want to make a point on just I want to give my guy Rashee Riceburner just a little more runway on his question about Justin Watson getting 11 targets being a felony, because I love Justin Watson. He's been a great player on this team in his role, but he led the team in snaps at the receiver position last night. He led the entire team in targets last night, including Travis Kelce. More targets went to Justin Watson last night, and they were, really focused on taking away Kelce. But if Justin Watson is your primary target guy in an offense, like for your pass offense in a big game, like that's bad. Like, don't mistake it. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Like, it doesn't matter how well he's playing. It doesn't matter how well anything else, whatever else is going on. That is not a recipe for success, and it's nothing against him. But when you give him 11 targets, he's probably going to drop 2 of them because he's Justin Watson. He's a role player. He's not supposed to be your number one target, your number one guy. He's an undrafted free agent at a Penn. He's been great for what he's supposed to do. Yeah. But you can't give him 11 targets in a big game and expect it to not end in a drop on 4th and 25. And I will say the interception Mahomes threw to him in the end zone, I think there was a little bit of that being telegraphed. Mahomes was reading him all the way, and the safety just could see it. I know Mahomes just put a little too much loft on it. If he would have just fired it in there, it would have been a touchdown. So it's not on Watson or anything. But I do think Mahomes is just – it's so obvious that he just wants to only throw to him too. And it's obvious in the offense play calling, and it's obvious in how he trusts the receivers. But, like, that is a recipe for failure, in terms of this NFL right now, like having Justin Watson as your main guy. And like, I want him to play over MVS, but he can't be 11 targets in a big game. That's just.
Our guy Carrington Harrison tweeted out, Justin Watson is like the 7-point per game scorer, and they're trying to get 19 a night from him.
I love that. I love that.
That's a basketball analogy, but yeah, you've got, there are role players and there are, featured players, and he's a role player.
And I get he's a better downfield. He's really good downfield route runner. He really is. He runs posts with good spacing, good timing. Obviously Mahomes trusts him, and it works out. Like, he had a beautiful catch to the corner, but again, like, that needs to be 3 catches a game, 4 catches a game at the most, out of 4 or 5 targets, right? Rashee Rice can do some of that stuff too. That's what I don't understand. We're not seeing some of that. Like, he's not the fastest dude down the field. He's really not. He's obviously much more faster just in short spurts and accelerating, but he can still go up and get it over guys. He can still run downfield. He's still a wide receiver. He's still done it plenty of times throughout his career. It's what he did at SMU a lot of times, is make catches downfield. So I'd like to see Rashee just get more kind of leeway in that way too.
Absolutely. That's one of the things we liked about him coming out of the draft, is he can make contested catches down the field. So yeah, I don't know all the solutions here other than Gary Sloat's idea of infinity hands.
Yeah, that GIF was cracking me up.
There's not a lot of options to make these guys better pass catchers. It's just a matter of figuring out creative ways to use them in the right combination. Dr. Spaceman, as I was trying to get to earlier, but the going back to this idea of like, hey, can they improve this group? What about promoting Cornell Powell and giving him snaps? Would that inspire the rest of the group or hurt it? Or should they snatch somebody off of the Panthers practice squad, Michael Strachan? I'm not familiar with that player. But, is the solution here to just bench all the starters? This is going back to, I told you all my Chiefs fandom came from watching games with my grandpa and my dad growing up. Grandpa's favorite story about sports in general, also being a Mizzou fan, I like to tell Mizzou stories to Ron because he's not. But he talks about Norm Stewart. Norm Stewart is just a legendary basketball coach and was famous for just not putting up with any bullshit, right? He was just a straightforward old school type coach. And my grandpa remembers this one game where they were all, to his eyes, they were all showboating. And so Norm benches the entire starting 5 for a substantial portion of a game. So I tell that story just to say, hey, is that part of the solution here? Should they literally just bench the starting 5 wide receivers and let anybody else have a chance at it just to prove a point? Would that help or hurt?
Yeah, I want to see some sort of motivational tactic like that, right? Like, I know like Coach K one time told his players they couldn't wear any Duke gear around campus. They didn't earn it or something. Like, if they were caught, they'd be in trouble or something. Like, they have to earn it back or something. Like, I don't know what it is. I'd love to see something like that, but it is not definitely just sending up Cornell Powell. Although, hey, I said it at the tight end position down the stretch of the season. Again, you play the Raiders twice. You play the Packers. You play the Patriots. You play the Chargers at the last week of the season, which, I really don't think is going to be that serious of a game with them crumbling at this point. Although, hey, with the AFC, they could still make a late run. It's kind of a wild AFC playoff picture right now. The Bengals, obviously Joe Burrow's out for the season. That game can't be as serious anymore, although they'll still give a fight. They're still a good team, even with a backup quarterback in my eyes. All that to say, there is room down the stretch here before the playoff run to experiment a little bit with personnel like this. Bench MVS for a game. I don't know, send a statement. He's dropped 2 huge passes back-to-back games. You play the Raiders upcoming. It's not going to happen, right? But if you're asking me, I don't think you would hurt the room if you held someone like MVS accountable like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it would maybe just be kind of weird, but I don't know. It probably would hurt the room maybe.
Yeah, I mean, he's your veteran. He's the one.
He's your veteran.
he's the highest paid receiver by far of that group. You know, there's something to be said for that. And I've seen a couple people making points about accountability on this team. Right. And pointing to the coaching staff and saying, "Hey, is the receivers coach not holding them accountable? Are they missing Eric Bieniemy?
Oh my gosh, don't get me started on that.
As that enforcer?" I don't know the answer to that. Maybe it might be something worth trying.
Did you see the receiver coach talk, Connor Embry? Did you see all that discussion on Twitter?
I saw a little bit of it. It didn't seem like people were super impressed.
Yeah, that's all it was. People weren't impressed with his practice or his press conference, and somehow that turns into, oh, that's why the receivers aren't playing well, because this guy's the receivers coach. I just want to put it out there. I felt strongly enough to tweet about it, but like, guys, Connor Embry, first-year receiver coach, his first year coaching the position, is probably the least impactful voice the receivers hear on a day-to-day basis in the room. They have Andy Reid. They have Matt Nagy. They have Joe Blameyer, last year's receiver coach, who's just a pass game coordinator. And, you know, they have, I think David Girardi is the quarterback's coach who's been there a long time. Like he works in, like, there's so many voices there. He's obviously a young dude. Like he's not going to be a veteran on the podium. And to me, it's like has no bearing on whether the receivers are playing well or not. But yeah, I just wanted to put that out.
It feels like an easy cop out. Like, hey, who can we blame here? And, you know, the performance of the wide receivers, at some point, it's concentration, it's execution, right? And there's only so much a coach can do with that. But yeah,
right.
I think they should leave no stone unturned, right? Do whatever it takes. Yeah, I don't mind saying, I put MVS as inactive for a week and give somebody else a chance. I don't hate that idea at all. And not to blame it all on him. And he's definitely taking a beating right now. And he's come out, and tweeted about it and talked about it, saying, "Hey, I'll be better. I appreciate the criticism and the support. I'll take everything that comes with it. I know I can handle it." So like, he's taking it like a man. He's doing, what you would want to hear from him, but on the field, performance wise, yeah, something should change, and it can't really be a bunch of new players coming in. So it's got to be execution. Tell you what, let's take a break and hear from our sponsors. Do you have a player in mind for this week's game? For those of you that are new here, every week we try to come up with somebody who's played for both the Chiefs and their upcoming opponent. And Ron stumped me last week, if I remember correctly, but that was the first time. So we'll see what you got this week.
Yeah, I did get you last time, and I'm going to try to get you this time too, because, this guy's pretty underrated in his NFL career. Yes, this guy, what NFL player am I? I played for the Chiefs and the Raiders, first with the Chiefs, then the Raiders. I finished my career. With the Raiders, I was a 2-time All-Pro and NFL MVP. And with the Chiefs, I didn't do much. But some people really think I should have played a little more. And some people would tell you that I would have led the team to the promised land a little bit one specific year. So that's all I got to say about who am I.
Ron's throwing up softballs. We'll be right back after this. Stick with us on the Out of Structure podcast. And we're back. Thanks for sticking with us on the Out of Structure podcast. We got more of your questions coming up. Now we get to the answer of Ron's question on what NFL player am I? I think you started down this path of somebody who finished their career with the Raiders, that started off with the Chiefs, and that could have been a number of people. But then you go 2-time All-Pro MVP. Okay,
yeah,
you're obviously talking about Rich Gannon, right?
Yeah, no, I gave you too much. Elvis
Grback's backup. Yeah.
Oh man, I know. I only know Rich Gannon's name from growing up and hearing, oh man, if we would have played him, like from all the older people in my life I knew as Chiefs fans. Yeah, that's a name. So shout out to you. It's an underrated name though, you got to say. But again, I gave it away. There's only so many MVPs.
Thomas Ramirez asked us, how does Pat trust any of these receivers now?
It's a good question. That's kind of where it's like, I made this point. I write for AP Premier. It's a newsletter. It's a great newsletter. We got like outside voices coming in and giving us kind of insights on the Chiefs, and Pete kind of gives you a little bit more from the locker room than he'd give you on the site. Because he's in there every practice, every game. They're giving more and more access. But all that to say, the piece I wrote for there, because I always write a first look, kind of my first initial thoughts on the field of what is happening. And man, my thing is like Pat's got to feel almost backed into a corner right now in terms of who do I trust. There's really no end in sight in terms of, you say like, okay, Tony and Rice are the guys you want to get the ball to more, but Stags, we've seen them have drop problems and do the same exact thing that MVS and Watson just had problems with last night, right? Like Tony cost us the game week 1 pretty much. Rice has obviously had drop problems, and he's a rookie, so you're hoping he grows out of it. But maybe that's one reason why maybe they're not giving him the ball down the field. Maybe he doesn't look comfortable catching the passes downfield in practices or in training camp, and they're just like, hey,
they throw to a receiver that's going to drop the ball or that doesn't make plays down the field. Yeah,
but that's exactly it, dude. It's like there's like no one has given him a reason to trust them overly, over somebody else, right? Like no one has been like, hey, like Rice, just because he makes plays after the catch. But man, I mean, if he keeps burning, if he does, he didn't have any drops, I don't think, this last game, right? He didn't have any drops last night. I think he had a pretty clean game when he got the ball, but it's just we've seen him have them. So it's just like you want to say like there is a solution. It's just not throwing MVS or Watson, but like you could have, in theory, the same problems because we've seen it. You could have the same problems throwing to anybody else. So yeah, I don't know how honestly. It's a good question, Thomas.
Rice caught 4 or 5, on Monday night, which was a pretty good performance out of him, pretty efficient. He also had the catch. Was it last game where he laid out for that pass on 3rd down? Do you remember this one that I'm talking about, kind of towards the sideline? Anyway,
yes. That was a good catch.
He's making some catches that should be building trust. I think it's got to be building with him. I think maybe there's something building with Tony. He's really, again, going really easy here with Tony, but there may be some trust building there. But yeah, I don't know how there's any trust with MVS at this point, and I'm sure there's others that that he's going to struggle with. I mean, some of that is really just, like I said, personnel that's not going to change.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, honestly. On the fact that Rice has, earned some trust in terms of making some tough catches, and it's just been kind of a roller coaster. Tony just hasn't gotten the opportunity. So, I think Mahomes has thrown to, like, even, I think Mahomes has thrown to him enough for how much he's been in to tell you that he trusts him to an extent. But it's just, at the same time, it's just no one's really just been, like, Justin Watson's the only one that he can really trust. And again, like, as long as he's only getting 3 or 4 targets and they're all meaningful targets, like, he's going to be awesome for this offense. But if it's 11 targets, we're just asking for trouble. So that's where the trust can only go so far with Justin Watson.
Yeah, he did a nice job getting open in the end zone for first drive of the game, or first touchdown drive of the game. That was.
There were 3 guys on Kelsey. That was hilarious.
Yeah, that was pretty. But if he'd have stopped there, he would have had a good game. All right. Thomas Ramirez also asked, what was worse, penalties on the offensive line or the wide receiver play overall? I think we all agree that it's the wide receivers that are the worst. But let's talk a little bit about the offensive line, because I struggled this week on how much blame to put on the line. The tackles struggled at times. The penalties are persistent and consistently a problem. And then it seems like the last couple of weeks, for whatever reason, somebody always seems to run into Donovan Smith and fall down. Previously it was Mahomes. This time it was Pacheco, I think. It's one of those things where it just makes me wonder about the play of especially the tackles. I think Trey Smith was big this week. I've seen some highlight reels of him versus Jalen Carter just battling it out in the trenches. I thought Creed was better. Tony and even Tooney was better. But I think maybe the tackles might be an issue. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that second play of the game, Juwan Taylor gets beat clean by Hassan Reddick. Yeah. And actually, if you take a look at it, which I'll definitely post on Twitter once the All-22's out, MVS does a great job beating his guy, fakes a corner, goes post. There's no safety help because they are blitzing, and he would have been, if Mahomes bought himself a second more, he would have had a touchdown to MVS probably, if he would have caught it, obviously. He probably, that's a 50-50 shot because it's wide open. Actually, probably more like a 20-80 shot. Anyway, but yeah, no, that's the one thing going into this game. Once it started raining a little bit, I was a little worried because I didn't know if we could trust the run game against this Eagles front. The Eagles front was giving up the least rushing yards per game coming into the game in the NFL. It's because they have dudes like Jordan Davis, right? Big guy from Georgia from last year. Jalen Carter, obviously still. But even guys like Milton Williams, who made some plays last night, 93. Guys, they just have a bunch of names on the interior that can just clog up space, right? And so it's hard to run on them. You got to give credit to the offensive line in the run game specifically, for sure. Gaining space, giving holes for Pacheco to run hard too. They were really setting the edge well on off-tackle runs. That's one thing I noticed. Like Noah Gray and Travis were doing a great job on a few occasions, really sealing it and giving Clyde. Clyde had one where, man, I swear Clyde has these runs where it's like, it's a great run for him, but like if it was anybody else, it might be a crib call. Like it's one of those, like, I love Clyde. And Jarek had one too, honestly, actually, where he kind of broke loose and got tripped up. Man, he was slow getting into that second level. Like if that was Pacheco, that might have been a crib call as well. So
yeah, I'm a little concerned about McKinnon slowing down. I think a lot of people were laughing about Clyde this week, kind of looking like Eddie Lacy or somebody, look a little
oh my
thicker
gosh.
in the middle.
Wow, that's rude.
I don't know what that was all about, but he looked good. He had 2 big runs. That's all he had, but both of them were good runs and well blocked. And so, yeah, I think you got to give some credit to the line for the run blocking this week for sure.
Yeah, no, and I should say one of Clyde's runs was an awesome, he was churning through. He runs very hard, and he definitely doesn't go down easy. Yeah. The other one that was open, it was kind of towards the red zone. It was right in front of us. It just felt like it was so well blocked. And, if it was somebody like really good, it might have been.
And they got blocked anyway from Gray and Kelsey on that one that you're talking
right. About. Yeah, no, Gray was doing well setting the edge all game in the run game. But yeah, no, I will say in the pass game, it definitely felt like, part of the reason, and this has kind of been a theme lately, some of the reasons maybe the pass game doesn't feel as, clean is they do have to keep tight ends in to help the offensive tackles, or the offensive tackles just kind of give up pressure. Mahomes has to navigate it. Even on the touchdown pass to Justin Watson early, he did have to, really play, well in the pocket, kind of, make a few guys miss a little bit. I mean, it was blocked up decently well, but there was definitely pressure. So yeah, I do think Jawan Taylor definitely doesn't do as well as I thought he would do against like straight speed, because he just got beat speed wise on that, even with kind of having the tight end help on that second play of the game. And so they are dedicating chip help a lot to guys that maybe are supposed to be maybe better pass protectors than they had last year. And that was kind of something we complained about last year with the offense sometimes, is they dedicated too much chip help to guys that were supposed to be, cornerstone left tackles. It's just the other side maybe now. So
it's weird though, because, and I know a lot of this is Mahomes, but that one loss of Taylor's early on that first drive that led to a sack, that was the only sack they gave up on the day. So if you give up one sack and you rush for 168 yards on a 5.6 average, you would think that would end up being a pretty good day for the offensive line looking back. I mean, I know there was a couple of other plays where Mahomes was under pretty severe pressure, and including the one he had to throw away. But, it's just funny. If you just look at the stats, it doesn't look that bad.
Well, I would say it's a good day from the offensive line overall. I mean, I think they played well against the Eagles front. I mean, this Eagles front is good, very good, one of the best, probably the best in the entire league. So I definitely don't want to be here saying that like I'm disappointed in how they played. They played their asses off. They played well. It's just that in general, if we're trying to think of, you mentioned the tackle play, if we're trying to, look at reasons why maybe the pass offense can be a little cluttered at times, it is because, they are dedicating chip help and kind of keeping guys in, and that doesn't allow as many guys into the route, right, when you have to leave a tight end in for a second or the running back in for a second. But all that's to say, I mean, yeah, I think they played their asses off. So shout out the O-line. They definitely deserve credit for, I mean, again, if the pass game catches a few more passes, doesn't turn it over, I mean, this is a resounding win, and we are loving up the offensive line for how they paved the way for it.
Well, what about at Jake for now, Jake Wilson's question. This is sort of a three-parter with a second question tied in here, but let's start with the first three parts. Looking forward and looking kind of where they are in the season, how should the Chiefs fans feel about Kansas City's pace when it comes to injury and load management? So how healthy are the Chiefs at this point in the season compared to what you would expect? And how about load management? Is there anybody else that they need to be worried about from a load management perspective?
Yeah, we've talked about Tony. Like, that's the one that they are apparently keeping a pretty good eye on. And so I think they're in a great position injury-wise, obviously, right? Like, they had no one on the injury report this week. Nick Bolton is going to be coming back from his and wasn't it a wrist injury? Like, that's not something that you can really be worried is going to affect his play when he comes back. He's probably, maybe he doesn't hit as hard that first game while he's getting kind of a feel of it again, right? Because that wrist
he'll
is probably
have a cast on or whatever,
But yeah, so I think they are in an amazing position injury-wise. It's honestly one of those things where, you kind of have, it's going to happen at some point. So you do kind of have to just knock on wood, prepare for it. But yeah, they're in a great position.
I will throw this out there, though. Some of the issues that they've run across, would they have been better if, obviously, Nick Bolton was healthy, if Jody Fortson was healthy, if Justin Ross, you got Prince Tega Winogo, not that he would probably be playing anyway. You had Najee Johnson, who was really playing lights out in the preseason, would have at least been a contributor on special teams at this point.
Yeah, Richie James.
Contributors there.
Yeah, Richie James. Yeah, I mean,
Richie James is back now, but he was inactive this week. We figured that he actually would be, just given they're usually slow about bringing guys back from injury, and they tried to trade him at the trade deadline, allegedly. I don't know what that means. He was somebody who I thought could be part of the answer when it comes to a reliable veteran wide receiver. Had over 500 yards last year on not a very good offense, with the Giants. This is somebody who, had some hope for, but have the Chiefs completely given up on him, or is he going to be part of the mix?
It's a good question. I mean, he is kind of redundant a little bit to, like, if Tony, I'd want him to do what Tony's doing, but then, like, why not just give Tony the ball in those situations? But, maybe they trust him more health wise, and maybe that gives them more opportunities to, because he does have that same sort of wiggle at times in space where he can make dudes miss. And so maybe you do kind of get him going in the same ways Tony can, but obviously, not ramping up Tony's snaps. So maybe that's one thing.
If we go back to Jake's question, let's give him a grade here. So what grade would you give the team for injury and load management so far this season? I think it's probably a B+ or A-.
Yeah, I'd say an A. I'll give him an A, honestly. I mean, I don't see, again, I think the Tony thing is honestly probably smart what they're doing. Like, they're still the top seed with him being limited in snap counts. So, I wish maybe they would have.
Yeah. How about
I think they are still the one seed tiebreaker wise and everything. There's a few other guys with 3 losses. I could be wrong. We could look at it.
I think the Ravens have 8 wins.
Well, yeah, because we have the same amount of losses, and we have way more AFC wins, so we would have the tiebreaker there when it comes down to it. But yeah, anyway, how about in-season player development? So you've seen some big steps forward for Karlaftis, for even Trent McDuffie, who was already good last year, but he's just been phenomenal this year. You've had development for Leo Chenal. You've had development for Brian Cook. You've had, and not coincidentally, these are all defensive players that I've named. Yeah, I was going to say, can we split it into offense and defense maybe?
So in-season player development, defense, I think you give them an A+.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
They're crushing it. In-season player development on the offense, I mean, I think I might be nice giving him a D here. I mean, who has gotten better on the offense other than Rashee Rice?
But even then, like, he's doing the same things we knew he could do in the preseason. Like, we saw him take balls quickly and run up field and break tackles and look quick like that in the preseason. He hasn't necessarily, expanded his route tree for the most part. It's been a lot of the same stuff. Excuse me. So yeah, I mean, that part of it, I would probably say, yeah, it's pretty close to, I mean, I'm trying to think who else young-wise is even on the offense that, I mean, Sky Moore has obviously gotten worse, I feel like. I mean, he was playing more and contributing more at the beginning of the season than he is now. And so I think all that points to really, you could call it close to an F if you really wanted to on offense. But Rice, you do want to give him a little credit for Rice just being a player as the season's gone along. So, yeah.
Special teams, I think they fixed whatever kicking problems they had for the most part. The special teams coverage units have been solid. It's just the returners have been pretty bad. Now, Tony obviously had a nice game this week. So, I don't know, maybe a C on special teams, I guess. I don't know what that averages out to. But,
yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd say probably like a B overall, B minus overall, just because the defense has been so good that it is carrying the team a lot of ways. So I mean, you can give them credit for that. Yeah.
So give a little extra weight to that. How about the team's performance arc? Have they peaked too early? Are they peaking at the right time? Well, I think this is pretty clear. They haven't peaked yet. So they haven't peaked too early.
I don't think so. No, but it's just hard. I don't know what the peak is. If I mean, it is just the receivers clicking, I guess, but can they reach that peak? That's what I'm really questioning. So, but you're right. I mean, they're definitely not peaking. I mean, they're not peaking too early. So yeah, but it's not on time either. I don't know if it's on time because I'd like to see a little more development at this point in the season. It's week 11. So I think they are behind schedule, maybe just overall.
On time would be, they muddle through this week and next week, and then they get hot coming down the stretch, right? That would be peaking on time. I'd be okay with that. With them
right. That's
kicking it up in December and just really hitting their stride when the playoffs come around. They still have time to peak, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, you're right. I guess on paper, to me, that's probably what is going to happen. Like I will predict that they get hot, by winning these games down the stretch. I guess to me, it's just like, but I guess that's what he's asking, the performance arc, just this season's team. So, but I just don't know if it's going to result in them like staying hot for a Super Bowl run. I think it might. I think what you saw Monday night, in my opinion, is going to be pretty close to how it looks at the end. I really do think so. I believe it.
Yeah, it's possible. All right, one more question from our guy, Jake Wilson. In hindsight, should the Chiefs have kept a traditional fullback instead of that extra wide receiver? We were advocates for the fullback. I wanted to see them take Hunter Lupicki or Lukey, whatever his name is, or one of those other guys. I think it would have been fun to have that extra element to the offense. Maybe this becomes a running team in the second half of the season. Maybe the fullback could have been useful. And maybe just on an ancillary benefit, one less wide receiver, they would spread the ball out a little bit less. Maybe that would have been a positive early on.
Yeah, no, I think Blake Bell just needs to be used as a fullback, and then we'll be fine. But instead, we're still using him as an actual third tight end. So it is one of those things where it's just this tight end group is just not as explosive as it was last year. So, yeah, let's just give Blake Bell that fullback position. We'll just call him a fullback, and we'll just say we need to bring up let's just do it that way. We'll bring up one of the UDFA tight ends that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those deals where it's not where the league's going, but having that extra element, having something a little bit less predictable, having another body type out on the field, I would have been perfectly fine with that, and I think it could be fun. Well, tell you what, Ron, this is Thanksgiving week. It's holiday. It's time to start thinking about, what are we thankful for? How can we enjoy this time with our friends and family? I think we should do another Thanksgiving food draft and talk to. We'll see who ends up with a better plate. But first, from a Chiefs theme from Ed Holinsky, what should Chiefs fans be thankful about with this year's team? I'm going to start with Mark Gunnell's tweet here. For our guy Mark put out, hey, let's put this thing in perspective. The Chiefs had 2 red zone turnovers from their 2 best players and several drops and untimely penalties, and they still had a chance to win against the top team in the league record-wise. Clean up the mistakes. This team will be fine. And then he followed it up with a tweet saying that this team Tonight sucks, but the Chiefs will still be the number 1 seed and host the AFC Championship game for the 6th consecutive season. That's a bold prediction, but the Chiefs fans should be thankful that this team is still competitive. They're still at the top of the league. They still have the best player in the world, and the best defense you've seen in a long time. So I think a little perspective, and we all might feel more thankful about where the Chiefs are.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, what I'm thankful for, really, honestly, is appreciating, on the other side of the ball for once in this Mahomes era. I mean, it's all like, I've been writing. My first year writing was Mahomes' first or second year, starting, and so it's just all been, I've been all focused on how the offense is played and how what the offense does and kind of the ins and outs of it. It's been so cool to kind of get into the weeds more on the defense and how they're really leading this team and the different players that are stepping up, how they're using them, and Spags talking about them has been so cool to kind of listen. Spags is a great press conference listen. If anyone's ever curious, definitely listen to what he has to say. It's usually on Thursdays. So yeah, shout out the defense. I think that's what we got to be thankful for, because I will say again, this team is not going to win because of the receivers, but hey, this is a weird year in the NFL. This defense could lead them to a win. Like, I'm not saying that's not out of the question. Like, I want to make that clear. I just really don't think the offense has it in them to be the primary reason they win the Super Bowl. The pass off.
We're staying on the positive side here. So yes, the defense for sure, and the youth of that defense has got to leave you thankful and optimistic about the future. It's so nice to watch a game, and even like the Dolphins game, when you come down to the last drive, and the defense needs a stop for them to win, and to actually have some faith that the defense is going to get that stop. I mean, we didn't have a lot of faith that the offense was going to score at the end of the game here against the
Eagles, right?
But we had faith in the defense getting some stops. So having a defense that you can believe in, that can close stuff out, you're right. It could be a difference maker. If the offense doesn't lose the game for them, the defense could help win it. So obviously, I think we should all still be really thankful for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. I mean, this is a glorious time to be a Chiefs fan, even if they lose a game here and there. You're talking about a team that in my lifetime didn't sniff the championship game much, and now they've been to 3 Super Bowls in recent years, and there's a pretty good chance they're not done when it comes to that. So be thankful for this entire era of Chiefs football as a Chiefs fan.
Oh, for sure. But, we are thankful for food as well as football. So let's do this thing, Stags.
All right. Yeah, let's call this the second annual Thanksgiving Food Day Draft. Thanksgiving Day Food Draft on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. I'm going to give Ron the first pick because I typically dominate these drafts whenever I do this with Ron.
So I can't lie.
First pick, we're going to make a plate with 5 items on it. And then we'll put it out to the people on Twitter and see who comes up with the best plate. Ron, you got the first pick. We'll do it snake style.
Is dessert included?
Dessert's included, absolutely.
Good. Okay, good. Awesome. Well, the first pick, to me, it's near and dear to my heart on any given day, but Thanksgiving especially, with that homemade gravy, mashed potatoes and gravy combined, right? Like, I can get those together.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
Mashed potatoes and gravy. Just absolutely elite side at any time, but during Thanksgiving you get the homemade potatoes a lot of time. I mean, my mom does. You get the homemade gravy, and it's just hitting different. So yeah, shout out.
All right.
And gravy.
That's a good base. That's a good place to start. You're building in the trenches, so to speak.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely.
I like that. So for number 2, for the number 2 pick, I'm gonna go with turkey, which is always a lot of times the MVP. Normally, I cook the turkey like my grandmother did, like she taught me when I was like 12, just the old-fashioned way of doing it. This year, with my family, we decided to be lazy and ordered a smoked turkey, and I'm pretty pumped about that. I think it's going to be a choice because it's versatile. You start off with it at the dinner with the mashed potatoes and gravy, and slap that over on the turkey and eat it all together. But I almost look forward to the turkey sandwiches more than the initial run of the turkey. I'm tempted a lot of times just to go straight to the turkey sandwich and skip the whole, Thanksgiving dinner, just make a big fat turkey sandwich and then eat the sides with it.
Yeah, no, that's you're speaking my language. I'm the same way, and honestly, I have to I'm sticking with my carbs because of that. I love me. My mom makes homemade rolls, homemade just bread rolls. Cooks them from the yeast, from the get go. Man, they are fire. They are my favorite. So I'm gonna do some rolls for my second pick.
All right. Well,
carbs all day.
For my second pick, I'll add some carbs, but also maybe a little bit of meat with it as well. I'm going with some old-fashioned stuffing made with sausage.
Yep. Ooh,
that just hits
sausage.
It hits a little different, man. That is stuffing is a good side anyway. It's something you don't eat throughout the rest of the year, but make that I don't know if that's Southern style or what. That's stuffing with a little sausage in it gets the job done.
No, that sounds amazing. I don't think I've had stuffing with sausage in it, so I'm gonna have to try that out. I have to go. I have to make sure this gets on my plate. I got to make sure you don't steal it from me because in recent years, as I've become an adult, Stags, this has become, it's become a favorite of mine. The old pumpkin pie, the old classic. I could eat I could eat so much pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving. I used to just, I don't know, as a kid, sometimes there's just some things you're like, oh, I don't want to eat that because it's whatever. Like, I just didn't feel like it was good, but I've come to the light. It is goated. So shout out pumpkin pie.
Ooh, that sounds good. All right. So I've got so far. Ron's got mashed potatoes, rolls, and pumpkin pie. I've got turkey stuffing. I've got a couple different ways I can go with this next pick. I'm going to go with the old-fashioned. Again, this is old-fashioned, but not. If you've ever tried to make this particular dish with premium ingredients, fresh stuff, high-end ingredients, it's not as good. This green bean casserole with canned green beans, canned cream of mushroom soup, and a container of those fried mushroom or fried onion things that go on the top. For some reason, it tastes so much better with the worst, cheapest ingredients possible than if you try to order. We tried to order it from Whole Foods one year, and it was like fresh green beans and homemade, roux and all this stuff, and it was just not the same. So, green bean casserole with the canned ingredients.
Dang. I was choosing between pumpkin pie and that. I just really wanted to get pumpkin pie on there, but my mom makes a great green bean casserole, so you definitely just stole a pick of mine. But that's okay. We'll bounce back. Here. I'm looking at my plate. I feel like I still need some meat, right? Like I don't have any meat here. Some protein on my plate. I will say my wife's side of the family, they value their ham on Thanksgiving, so I got to go ham. Ham is one of those meats I never eat except for the holidays, and so I kind of like it that way because it's just it's not a meat that you kind of get tired of ham. I don't know, like you can't eat it too much in my opinion, but on Thanksgiving, on Christmas, a little honey baked ham maybe, or just a little brown sugar on it or something.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Also makes an elite sandwich as
right.
leftovers or during the meal. So I was assuming you were going to come back and go with the meat here. So Ron's got 4 of his 5 picks down. For my 4th pick, I'll jump to my dessert. And this is something that I would have never thought. I didn't think this was a traditional Thanksgiving dessert until I moved here to Des Moines, Iowa, where I live. 18 years ago, I moved up here. And for some reason, French silk pie is one of the go-to desserts up here. And you buy it, again, this is something you could make from scratch, and it could be great. But you go to, there's one restaurant in town called Baker's Square. Everybody buys their pies from there. There's a line. They have like an 18-wheeler outside full of pies, and the line is down the street. You have to reserve it weeks in advance. The French silk pie is become my new favorite dessert for Thanksgiving.
That's so funny you say that because like French silk was mine growing up, and like as I've matured, I've been like, I can't say that's my favorite pie anymore. Like that's too basic. It's just chocolate, right? Like of course it's someone's favorite pie. Like it's chocolate. It's great.
I'm at least
no,
10 years older than Ron, and clearly he's matured in his palate more than I have at this point.
No, I honestly, I will say I'd rather have a French silk pie than pumpkin pie. Honestly, I think pumpkin pie is so good though. It's just you got to have it. I think I would eat more pumpkin pie maybe than the French silk. I think French silk you can't eat as much of. So maybe that's where I'll stand my ground.
Pumpkin off as like a fruit or a vegetable, and be like, yeah, there's something healthy here. All right, what is your final pick of the 2023 Thanksgiving Day food draft?
Well, I figured I could get away with this, although I was pretty risky because this is just such a go-to dish. But my wife makes the best mac and cheese. I'm carbsing it up. I love me some carbs on Thanksgiving and Christmas. Fatten me up. Put 10 pounds on me. I want the carbs and mac and cheese. She bakes it over or whatever. Different kinds of cheeses. It's amazing. And so yeah, shout out the wife.
Wow. All right. Mac and cheese is something that I've rarely ever had on Thanksgiving, but I love a good mac and cheese as a side. It's a barbecue side for me. Yeah. I mean, I almost always get it with barbecue. But my final pick might be a controversial one for some, but on some of these dishes, I've gone with the cheap stuff out of a can. This last one, I'm going with the homemade version over the cheap stuff out of a can, although both in small quantities are key for any holiday meal. It's the cranberry. My wife makes a really good homemade cranberry sauce with like fresh cranberries and oranges and stuff in it. That's awesome. I don't hate the one out of a can either, though. When you can slide it out of the can and it still has like the rings around it, it looks like the shape of a can. That's that gelatinous. Sweet, tangy, touch that really rounds out the meal. I'm going with cranberry as Mr. Irrelevant here for the Thanksgiving dinner draft.
The Ryan Suckup, the Brock Purdy of this draft. Yeah, no, I feel good, Stags. I feel good about my plate. I am missing, it's not as colorful as it needs to be, right? My mom always says, you want your plate to be a little more colorful than this is. A lot of beige, a lot of neutral colors, but we'll get some greens in there. I should have said shout out greens. I've become a more cultured man since my marriage. So greens are fire. I love me some greens. I'll eat those all day.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, this is a pretty good draft. I think even if you put these two teams together, you'd have an elite meal if you can get all the way through it. Looking forward to a quiet Thanksgiving at home with the family. I hope all of you enjoy it, whatever it is that you're doing, whether you're traveling, you're cooking, you're having people over. Hopefully you're watching some football, being lazy and eating an exorbitant amount of food and with healthy and happy family around you. Best wishes for a fun holiday, and hopefully we'll get back on the winning streak against the Raiders coming up. We won't do a big preview of the Raiders game. You know who the Raiders are. You know who the Chiefs are. It's really just a matter of getting this team to execute again the way they're capable of. So I feel like we can wrap it up right there, Ron. What do you think?
Yep, Raiders are feisty. They're 5-5. So let's give them a little credit. They fired their coach already though, so they're playing with that interim coach energy. But
there's something to be said for that. But this team's a contender. They'll get back on track. Hopefully, it's this week. Thanks for being with us today, spending some of your time with the Out of Structure podcast. I'm Matt Stagner, Ron Kopp Jr., my guy. Appreciate you holding it down. We'll talk to you all next week.